Hello, welcome to today's lecture. We're going to be speaking about the 3 weeks. The 3 weeks is a time period which we have every year where we mourn for the destruction of the temple. It starts off in the 17th of Tammuz, the 4th month of the Jewish calendar is Tammuz. It's usually the midsummer month. Right? On the 17th of Tammuz, we fast to commemorate the breaching of the wall around Jerusalem, which and 3 weeks later, the destruction of the temple. Okay, that's the general idea of what the 3 weeks are, but it goes more than that. There's actually 5 things which happened on Shiva Asar B'Tammuz, and 5 things which happened on Tisha B'Av, the 9th day of Av. Right, you work at 17 to 9, it's 3 weeks. So the 5 things which happened on Shiva Asar B'Tammuz, for those who don't know, are on the 17th, the story when after the giving of the 10 commandments, God spoke to the Jewish people at Sinai. They were meant to wait at the foot of the mountain till Moses came back down with the tablets which had inscribed on them the 10 commandments. It wasn't just a memorial. These were very, very significant spiritually. These tablets, we'll hopefully go into this. I'm planning to make a follow-up lecture, and hopefully we'll go into many more of the details of this in that lecture. We're going to speak about something different today, obviously in relation to the 3 weeks. So the Jews, a few Jews, we should say, there's only a few hundred Jews who actually served the golden calf in the end, but the whole nation got punished because they shouldn't have let it happen, right? And obviously the ones who actually did it were punished for that immediately. They wanted to make you have to understand that the Jewish people were on an extremely high spiritual level after hearing God speak 40 days earlier. So you have to understand what on earth caused them to start bowing down to a golden calf. It wasn't merely they had an urge to bow down to a calf. That'd be crazy. The Satan, tricked the Jewish people into thinking that Moses wasn't going to come down. They were waiting for this. As I say, you have to understand what these tablets were. They weren't just physical tablets, which are just, oh, that's nice. We've got just to remind us. There's something much deeper about them. And the Jewish people were sort of balancing a tightrope spiritually. They heard God speak and they needed to get back in contact with God. The desire to reconnect with God was unimaginable. And they had to stay there without Moses giving them messages from God, and obviously not God speaking to them openly anymore, not on the national level anyway. And after 40 days, hey, Moses not coming down. And the Satan tricked them, said, look, Moses is dead. And a few of the Jewish people were panicked, and they said, we've got to get that feeling of reality back. So they made the golden calf, which is one of the 4 sides of the Merkava. We spoke about in the lecture all about individuality versus conformity. We spoke about the 4 camps. One of the 4 camps correspond to the 4 sides of God's throne, and one of the sides is got the face of a cow. So they were trying to access God through that path. That's really what was going on. We might give a whole lecture about it one day. We'll see. So, but it was wrong. And because of that, when Moses came down with the tablets, he smashed them, right? There's many explanations why he did it, but yeah. The idea is that God, what do you mean? You told them not to serve idols? Well, where I don't see any tablets. That's a very, very basic explanation. There's deeper meanings behind that one as well. Yeah, another one is the letters flew up, which were engraved, which is incredible because the letters are not really tangible. They're just gaps in the stone, the engraving, right? And the letters were keeping the tablets light enough for Moses to hold. They're very heavy stone, and they were sort of like what was it, 6 by 6 by 6 by 3. I think both of them together were basically a cubit cubed, basically. So it'd be sort of like about half a meter in all three dimensions. Very, very heavy stone. So he dropped it, he threw it, or he wanted to show he was angry that you've done the sin of idolatry, you don't deserve the tablets, whatever the explanation is. So actually, on the 17th of Tammuz, we're mourning not really the Egel, we're mourning the destruction of the tablets, which happened because the Jews served the Egel, the golden calf. That's the first thing which happened. The second one is that the korban tomid, the daily sacrifice in the temple, which had been going all the way from the time of the tabernacle in the desert, for hundreds of years. It stopped on the 17th of Tammuz. The third one is one of the kings, I think it was King Menachem, I'm not 100% sure. He put an idol in the actual temple, right, in the time of the first temple period. So we're talking about maybe 600-700 years after going out of Egypt. The fourth thing is Sofa Pustimus Torah. There was a persecution of the Jews by the Romans in the Second Temple period, or just after destruction. Many righteous, very, very holy sages got killed. We actually mentioned them on Tisha B'Av with the Lamentations, the dirges which we chant. This one very moving one about the 10 martyrs. Rabbi Akiva, the famous Rabbi Akiva, was one of them, right? But one of the other rabbis who got killed, he was actually wrapped with a Sefer Torah, with a Torah scroll, and not only was he burnt, but the Torah scroll was burnt with him. And that itself was a tragedy. We have to understand why specifically that time. There have been, unfortunately, other times where the Torah scroll has been burnt throughout history, but this seems to be enough to be one of the 5 core reasons why we keep the 17th of Tammuz as a fast day, as a day of mourning. And the fifth one is Huvka, that at the time of the Second Temple and possibly the First Temple as well, there's a discussion about whether it was the 17th of Tammuz by the First Temple as well, but definitely by the Second Temple period, on the 17th of Tammuz, the Romans who were besieging Jerusalem, they finally broke through the wall. Okay, and on the other end of the 3 weeks, you have Tisha B'Av, which is also a fast day, a much more serious, sad fast day. And the 5 tragedies which happened on Tisha B'Av were the story of the spies who spoke slander on the land of Israel when Moses sent in the 12 spies to Israel. When the Jewish people were about to enter Israel, they thought, well, let's just check it out first, and they didn't trust God. And 10 of the 12 spies came back with bad reports. They said, oh, no, don't go there. It's not worth the risk. That what happened on Tisha B'Av when they reported back, and the Jewish people cried, and God said, because you're crying now for a stupid reason, because the land of Israel is a wonderful land, right? You don't have to be scared. There's very deep spiritual ideas connected with all the stuff I'm saying here. I'm not going through all of it now. I might touch on many of the points in the next lecture. But anyway, but that's the idea. Let's keep it simple. Because they cried on the night of Tisha B'Av that they would have to go to Israel, and it was a bad place according to the slander of the lies of the spies. Then God says, I'm going to make this a night of mourning and crying for generations, right? And then you have a real reason to cry. And then indeed, what happened on Tisha B'Av many years later, almost 1,000 years later, 800 odd years later, destruction of the first temple by the Babylonians. Then the destruction of the second temple, about 500 years after that, by the Romans, right? Post on Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av. Then the town of Beitel got destroyed, right? There was going to be a resistance there. They thought even Bar Kokhba, who was the head of the rebellion, they thought he was going to be the Messiah. It wasn't meant to be necessarily that 2,000 years. So the Messiah came theoretically a couple of decades after the destruction of the second temple. Theoretically, the Messiah could have come then, and that rebellion was crushed, and all hope had been gone. Right, so it's basically the town of Beitel was destroyed, and the fifth thing, and that was in Tisha B'Av. The fifth thing which happened is Tunis Rufus Arasha, a Roman general. He decided to plow over the ruins of the temple, and that's what we spoke about in last year's lecture, about the idea of why was that a tragedy in itself? Because surely the destructions already happened. The temple was in ruins anyway. So we explained the idea is that as long as the ruins were there, the Jewish people were still hoping. They remembered, oh dear, look what happened because of our sins. Let's repent. But once it was plowed over, it just became a nice tourist site or just a regular field, and no one was enthused to or sort of provoked to have any self-reflection about what we used to have, that connection with God which we had with the temple was standing, with the Shekhinah, the divine presence was present in the temple. More in the first one than the second one, but that's a discussion we might have in the next lecture. But it means that totally forgotten that we ever had this deep connection with God through the temple. Okay, so those are the 5 things which happened at each. So one question is, why is it called the 3 weeks? Why don't we just have a fast day on the 17th of Tammuz, then 3 weeks later we have a fast on the 9th of Av? Good question. Why do we have to keep mourning within the mourning, mourning, right? To mourn, the verb, right? Throughout these 3 weeks, and it's very strange because normally when there's mourning in Jewish law, a person's a mourner, he lost a close relative. The mourning starts very intensely, right? He sits on the ground for 7 days. He has his clothes are turned. He has to tear his clothes, his shirt, whatever, the vest, and sit on low chairs, right? Doesn't wear shoes, and he's just sitting there thinking about the relative who has just passed. And he has people from the community, his friends, other extended family coming and trying to comfort him. The first 3 days, there's an idea that that's a time where the mourner's meant to get it out of his system, he's meant to do crying. Then it lightens up the next 4 days of the 7 days of mourning. Right, he's still sitting on the floor, but he's starting to come to terms with it. Then after the 7 days, he feels right, okay, sad, but yeah, life goes on. And then about the next 30 days, he doesn't have a haircut. I can't remember all the intricacies, right? He can wash himself after the 7 days, but he can't have haircuts, I think. I'm not sure if he's allowed to have newly laundered clothes. I think if it's for a parent, I don't think they can. Right, and then after 30 days, that's the end of the mourning period, unless it's for parents. For parents, the mourning goes on for another 11 months till 12 months in total, right? And it's much lighter. People can't get married within that those 12 months, and they don't listen to music or go to any celebrations, like go to someone's wedding celebration or anything like that. There's certain laws there. But you see that the way that the mourning happens in Jewish law, it unfolds slowly and it gets lighter. Whereas in the 3 weeks, we start off with 3 weeks. We obviously after the fast day of the 17th of Tammuz, we don't go swimming. We don't have music. We don't get married. Very similar. They parallel a lot of the laws of an individual who's mourning for a lost one. But then when it comes to the first day of Av, that's the 9 days, the beginning of the 9 days, because 9 days is obviously the first day of Av till the 9th day of Av. Right? The 9th day of Av is Tisha B'Av, which is the day of the destruction of the temples. And many other tragedies in Jewish history, like I think the Holocaust started, or Second World War started on Tisha B'Av. I think in 1944, I think in Treblinka, there's a death camp. Was in Hungary, I think. It had hundreds of thousands of people. We speak about 6 million. I think something like 100,000 or hundreds of thousands of people got killed in one day. That was on Tisha B'Av. When the Nazis were getting desperate, they saw that they were losing the war. They got their hands on a lot of Hungarian Jews. I believe that's how it goes. It's been a while since I did my history. And they said, well, forget it. We just get rid of them, just kill them quickly, and there's just group after group, gas chambers, burn them, whatever it was. Yeah. Yes, there's an incredible tragedy there on the Tisha B'Av. As we said, God promised, you cried for no reason before. I'll give you a good reason to cry. And that's why these 9 days, especially Tisha B'Av, is a very kind of scary day for Jewish people, because we know what the history of this day is as well. Right? Anyway, so once the 9 days start, already you're not allowed to, it says, you have to limit your happiness, your rejoicing. So not only do we not get married or go to weddings, or obviously if you can't go to wedding if the other person's not allowed to get married, okay, because everyone has to keep these laws. And not only do you not go swimming, things like that, or listen to music. Now, when it comes to 9 days, we can't even wash our clothes. We don't take baths for the Sabbath. We can wash in honor of the Sabbath and lukewarm water, whatever. Right? But otherwise, we don't have pleasurable washing. We don't wear freshly laundered clothes because that makes us feel happy. We don't build buildings of Simcha. We try not to start new businesses in the 9 days. There's lots of time where we stop doing the regular things which we do throughout the whole year, which might give us energy and happiness and joy. We try limiting that because we're meant to be introspecting. It's a time of calmness where we're just thinking, right, why are we so restricted here? We can't have this type of joy, that type of joy, because this is a time period where we are mourning, where we're actually trying to remember something we've lost. And then eventually we get to the week of Tisha B'Av. Some people have more stringencies in the week of Tisha B'Av. So let's say Tisha B'Av falls on a Wednesday, so from the Sunday to the Wednesday, they have even more restrictions. We don't eat meat or drink wine in the 9 days or the week of Tisha B'Av, different customs. And then you get the day before Tisha B'Av, where already things are much more solemn, and we already have a meal sitting on the ground with ashes and an egg to remind us of the mourning and the destruction of the temple. And then eventually we have Tisha B'Av itself, which is the saddest day of the year for the Jews, as we said. And we sit on the floor the whole day, literally like a regular mourner would for a parent or a sibling, right? And we don't eat the whole day. Again, remember, Shivas and Tammuz and Tisha B'Av are both fast days, but the Tisha B'Av is even more stringent. It's a full day fast, not just the daytime. We fast the night before as well, whereas the 17th of Tammuz we only fast by after dawn, which in the north of England is basically 24 hours. We don't get much nighttime here in the north of England in summertime. And yeah, and then so we see that the Avelis gets worse. The morning gets worse and worse until you get to Tisha B'Av, which ironically, if you remember last year's lecture about Tisha B'Av, that's actually a moed. It's a day where because we go so deep down into the depths of despair and sorrow, that's where we turn things around and we realize, yeah, this is really bad now. Why? That's because we abandoned God. And then that ignites within us a desire to repent and get close to God again, which creates a very, very, very deep, profound connection between us and God. Whereas imagine if you've got your friend, you're just friendly with him when things are okay, haha. But what happens when things get hard? Yeah, what happens if he does something to you which really affects you and hurt you, right? So, yeah, forget it. It's not that important anyway. That shows the friendship was not there in the first place. It was just a matter of convenience. Whereas if you say, no, we've got to sort this out, and you come and you speak it out, right? And you express your disappointment in him, right? And you argue it out, and then realize that, yeah, okay, fine, I'm sorry, right? We shouldn't have fallen out like that. And then you get that creates a new dimension of richness of the relationship, which comes through the darkness, through the arguments, through the betrayal, and then making up afterwards. Happens even more so in marriage. That's why it's very sad when people get divorced when they just have an argument. That's why you grow in marriage. Marriage is when things go wrong and you somehow manage to work it out. That creates, yeah, my love for you is not conditional on things being okay. It's much deeper than that. It's a permanent connection. That's the idea, anyway. So that's what we get when we mourn on Tisha B'Av. It becomes a moed, a festival. Moed means a meeting place, literally, right? The festivals are meant to be places where we connect with God more than we do the rest of the year. So Tisha B'Av is the ultimate form of connection, but it's a connection through the darkness. So the question is, why does it get worse, whereas a regular Avelis gets better? And why are we doing it for 3 weeks? Why do we not just have 2 isolated days of mourning for if it's to do with the 5 tragedies on Shivas of Tammuz, fine. Fast on that day. 5 tragedies on Tisha B'Av, fast on that day. Why do you have to involve the days in between? You can say historically because, yeah, once the walls were breached in the time of the Second Temple on the 17th of Tammuz, it got worse and worse and worse until the Tisha B'Av, it was destroyed. But, okay. There has to be something more than that. And we're going to see today, hopefully, please God, that some beautiful ideas. Now, the idea of the 3 weeks is called Bein Hametzorim. You're between 2. It says in the book of Lamentations, book of Eicha in the Bible. All the pursuers caught her Bein Hametzorim. The Jewish people were caught Bein Hametzorim, between the boundaries, between the, what's it called? The borders, right? Or boundaries where you're enclosed in. It's very interesting because Bein Hametzorim means literally between the borders or the boundaries. And we're referring to these 3 weeks as 2 boundaries. You've got the 17th of Tammuz, the 9th of Av on the other end, and we're kind of trapped in the 3 weeks in between those two sad events, the sad days. There's a very interesting that the word Bein Hametzorim, between Metzorim, means the boundaries. The word Metzorim is the same word as Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim is Egypt. As you know, this can open a doorway for us to understand what's going on here. The Jewish people are meant to be movers and shakers, right? Okay. The very first words ever said to a Jew, that's Abraham, were Lech Lecha, the beginning of chapter 12 in Genesis. Vayom Hashem el Avram, and God said to Abraham, Lech lecha me'artzecha me'moladcha me'beis avicha, go for yourself from your land, from the place of your birthplace, the place of your father, to the place where I will show you. Lech lecha, go. The Jewish people are meant to be goers. We're meant to be growing spiritually the whole time, right? In Mitzrayim, Paro says to the Jewish people, to Moses, right? Moses says, let us go 3 days. Let us out for 3 days. We will go. Lech, walking. Walking means you're going to a destination. You've got purpose. You're not just running around in a circle like trapped between the Hametzorim, between the boundaries. You're trapped. You want to go for a run, but you're in an enclosure. You have to go in a circle, right? Otherwise, you're going in a line. You're going from one place to another place, from a starting point to a destination. You've got purpose. You're growing towards something. You're going towards something. So Moses says, we want to go for 3 days in the wilderness to sacrifice and serve our God, right? And Paro's two minds here. Well, I don't want to have any more of these nasty plagues. But 1 minute, who's going? 3 days. Okay, as long as there's not too many of you, right? Mivo mir holchim. Who are these people who are going to be going? And then Moshe said, we're going to take our men, old, the young, the women, the children, animals, everyone's going, right? Right? And you're going to have to give us extra animals as well, because we're not quite sure what our God's going to demand of us there. Right? It was a ploy just to test Pharaoh to see whether he'd give in finally. But it's interesting, the word that Paro uses are mivo mi holchim. Who and who are the holchim, are the walkers? Because in Mitzrayim, we don't understand this concept that you're going towards somewhere else. In Egypt, in Mitzrayim, you're trapped in Mitzrayim. You're limited. You've got the physical world, that's it. You can have your gods as well, but they're gods which are to do with the physical world. There's nothing truly transcendent. The Jewish people said, no, we're transcending this world. We're going to go and serve God. And that's indeed what they did. 50 days after they went out of Egypt, they arrived at Sinai, and 45 days later, but on the 6th day of Sivan, 6 days after being at Sinai, God actually spoke to them, right? And they had that transcendent connection with God. That's real halicha. So you see, the Jewish people broke out of the boundaries when they went out of Egypt. However, when they served the golden calf, which is the beginning of the 3 weeks, the beginning of Bein Hametzorim, right? And Moses broke the tablets. They went back into that constriction again. They lost that. We're going to speak about this hopefully in the next lecture about the significance of the Luchos, of the tablets. But the tablets weren't just like random, just pieces of stone with writing on them. Just so, what was number 3 again? Oh, right, yeah, don't take God's name in vain, thanks. Right. There was something very, very fundamental and deep about the nature of the Luchos. Right? One of the 10 things, the writing, the stones themselves are 2 of the 10 things which were created on Friday as Sabbath was coming in on the 6th day of creation. That's how significant they are, right? And even the writing, the actual luchos themselves, and the tool, whatever this means, which God used to write on the luchos, was also created. It's very, very deep, fundamental ideas connected with the luchos. And they got broken. And the luchos, essentially, we're going to speak about that in the next lecture, but it enabled the connection of the Jewish people with God on a very deep level. Let's put it like that. And once they broke, that connection gone, right? And then there's the 9 other tragedies, right, which happened in the Midbar, in the desert. And after the 10th one, God said, "That's enough. you're not going to the land of Israel now. And that was actually the Meraglim. The 10th one was the Meraglim, the spies. It was the 10th sin which the Jewish people did in the desert. And that's so interesting. Number 10 again. We've got the 5 things on Shivas B'Tammuz, the 5 things on Tisha B'Av. We're going to speak about that in the next lecture. So the first thing which gets the ball of destruction and disconnection with God going is the breaking of the Luchos. That's where we went back into the Hametzorim, the boundaries, not Mitzrayim, the country, but that state of consciousness where we are limited. We don't have an automatic sort of like highway back to direct link back to God. It's much harder. I have to work for it now. That's what happened when the tablets were broken. That's the beginning of the 3 weeks, the beginning of Bein Hametzorim, between the boundaries, because that's one boundary now. You break the Luchos, bang, right? You're limited. And what's the other boundary? Tisha B'Av, the temple. The temple is a place where God's presence was felt. Amazing. It wasn't just a regular place which felt holy. They said whenever a person went in there, yeah, he would never come out a sinner. He'd have some sort of experience there where every Jew who went to the temple, they'd come out. If they were a sinner, they'd be repenting afterwards, right? Right? There's a story, I think by the Romans or something. The destruction of the second temple, very vague this story. There was a very terrible Jew who betrayed the Jewish people badly. He might have been the ones one of the ones who let the Romans in or something. And they said, look, we're a bit scared. The Romans tried entering the temple to take out some of the vessels there, and some of them were just dropping dead because of the holiness of the place. I think that's how the story goes. So they asked a Jew to go in, and there was one treacherous Jew who said, yeah, I'll do it, right? Right, fine, no problem. Everyone else refused. I'll do it, no problem. Yeah, stupid temple anyway, right? So he went in, he came out holding a few of the vessels. I said, go and go in a second time and get us some more. You'll be handsomely rewarded. He said, no, I'm not doing it. Yeah, how can I betray my God and everything? What were you talking about? So you could torture me if you want, and I still won't do it. And he literally gave up his life for something which he just did a few minutes ago, a few minutes earlier. What happened? Right, and he was tortured, a horrendous torturous death. I can't remember the details, but it's a story in the Medrash, I think. Could be in the Talmud, could be in the Gemara, actually. Okay. So what happened when he went into the temple? Anyone who goes in the temple, they get such a connection with God, an awareness with God, that however damaging and however much darkness a person brought on his soul by sinning, God reinstated the status quo, with a bit of a boost as well. A person was able to think clearly again and repent. Amazing. So the destruction of the temple is also the destruction of something which let us transcend. So it's again another Hametzorim, another Hametzah, another boundary. So we're trapped between these two boundaries. The process from Shivas B'Tammuz to Tisha B'Av is telling us, look, you've lost something, but don't lose everything. So each day of the 3 weeks, we're going to be mourning more and more and more until we realize what's going wrong, right? And we hopefully repent. And if we don't get the message, it'll get worse and worse and worse. That's what's going on here. That's why the mourning gets worse as we go along in the 3 weeks. Whereas a normal person, he's just coming from a sad situation, a painful situation. The further in time he gets, away from it, the more he can recover and come to terms with his loss. Whereas here, we're not going away from something, we're going into danger. So we have to be awakened even more, and we have to suffer more. We have to do more things to limit our happiness and our joy and our distractions. We can't be distracted in these 3 weeks. Think what's going on. We're just going through, another year. 1 minute, we're in exile here. Yeah, this isn't the state of the world, especially not the Jewish people. This is not how it's meant to be. The Jewish people are meant to be growing the whole nation. We're meant to be bringing massive amounts of divine light into the world, making the physical world spiritual and physically successful as well, because of the divine energy which comes in, gives hatzlocha, gives success to the spiritual and the physical elements of the world. And we're just in a world of total confusion and chaos and war, especially now with the massive anti-Semitism going around the world again, right? What's going on here? There's no stability. Remember, we gave that lecture about why is God doing everything like this? Yeah, one of the reasons is because he wants to destabilize the world in order to get people to say, well, I can't wait till this is over. We'll go back to normal. Eventually, they're going to realize there's not going to be a normal which we're going to get back to. And we've got to get a new paradigm. We've got to realize, there's a spiritual reality. There's God who's running the world. Okay, let's stop being comfortable in our physical existence. Let's try focusing on maybe becoming more spiritual beings and trusting in God and realizing God's real, right? Instead of being hedonistic and just comfortable. Yeah, terrible word. We're very comfortable, right? We're comfortable, and then what's going to happen after 80, 100 years, right? You're going to die, and then what? Not going to be comfortable then. You have to plan for then, right? And that happens. That goes on forever, right? So people need a wake-up call. So the more we don't get the message, it has to be worse and worse, and eventually get to Tisha B'Av. And Tisha B'Av is when we get the message, right? Because literally we can't do anything, not allowed to do any work. You've got to sit on the floor, mourning the whole day. There's nothing else to think about. So you have to end up confronting your own demons and repenting. And that's when the whole thing flips. That's why Tisha B'Av is the Moyed, the festival. Okay, so that's the 21 days, the 3 weeks of the Bein Hametzorim, between the boundaries. Now, something very interesting. The Maharsha brings down that there's actually 22 days between Shiva Asar B'Tammuz and Tisha B'Av. Maharsha's one of the greatest commentaries on the Talmud. Absolute genius. If people try learning a piece of Maharsha, it's so intricate and deep, his thinking. You have to crack your head over it. And he's got a section where he speaks about the Ganta, the more esoterical aspects of the Talmud as well. And he mentions that the 22 days between Shiva Asar B'Tammuz and Tisha B'Av, just to make it clear, if Shiva Asar B'Tammuz this year was on a Sunday, Tisha B'Av is going to be on a Sunday. So even though it's 3 weeks from Sunday to Sunday, technically it's 22 days. Kind of parallels the musical scale, actually. You've got the lower octave, middle octave, and top octave, right? So you start with C, you go to C, you go to C, and then you got top C. So really, there's 3 octaves, but you started with a C, a second C, a third C, but then you got a top C at the end. That's the 4th C. So it's really actually 22 notes in 3 octaves, right? It's not 21. There's 22 days of the 3 weeks, if you include the first and the last day. How does that work? And he says that the 22 days of the 3 weeks actually correspond to the 22 days which we have another time of the year, which is Rosh Hashanah to Shmini Atzeres. Rosh Hashanah is the Jewish New Year, where we're getting judged, and then we've got the 10 days of repentance, culminating on the 10th of Tishrei, which is Yom Kippur, which is the holiest day of the year. where we're like angels, we fast the whole day, right? We're praying the whole day. And that's a Day of Atonement. That's when, interestingly, Moses got the second set of tablets. It happened on Yom Kippur. So you see some parallel there already. And then you got Sukkot, the Festival of Tabernacles, where we go out and sit in the hut with the sechach, the leaf roof, the roof made out of leaves or branches. Right, that's meant to represent the idea of us living in God's, under God's protection, the shade of God. It's called the Schach Tziludim Hamnusa, the shade of Emunah, of trust. And then eventually at the end of it, the end of the 22 days, the end of the Sukkot, you got the last day. It's called Shmini Atzeres, which is the happiest day of the year, which is also known as Simchas Torah, where we dance with the Torah scrolls. Very interesting. Maybe it parallels that burning of the Torah on Shivas Tammuz. We've got the celebrating with the Torah. Very interesting. You see lots of parallels between the 3 weeks and these 22 days between Rosh Hashanah and Simchas Torah. But that's when October the 7th happened, by the way. That's why many Jewish people think that October the 7th must be a very good day in the long run, because usually, as we said, tragedies usually happen on Tisha B'Av. They don't happen on the happiest day of the year, the day where we're the closest to God, where we're celebrating with the Torah, our connection with God. Very strange. So maybe it was hinting to us that this is the beginning of the final war, like we spoke about in our Armageddon lecture. And even though it's painful, but this is the beginning of the redemption. Yeah, it might seem strange, but that's what happened in Egypt. Again, we're going back to Egypt, seeing all the connections here. When we went out of Egypt, Moses came to Pharaoh, and he said, "Let the nation go," right? And the Jewish people say, "Yes, finally we're getting redeemed." And guess what happened? Pharaoh said, "This is not good." The Jews like talking about leaving. Let's make him work even harder. So until then, they had to make a certain quota of bricks every day, each person. But they were supplied with the raw materials, at least. You just had to do the work. Now Pharaoh said, "All right, from now on, you have to find your own straw to mix into the mud and the clay to make the bricks." So, and they were working from morning to night, and they had to find straw on top of that. And they were working at their maximum pace. It was absolutely unbearable already, and now they had to do this on top. So that was actually the year before the redemption, after Moses was sent. And Moses said, "What's going on here, God? You sent me to take them out of Egypt, and now things have got worse." Right? So the way God works is just before the redemption, it gets even darker. Right? So hopefully that's what's happening now. Right? Things are getting so bad that hopefully is a sign that things are going to flip round. Very similar to Tisha B'Av, where things get very dark, but that's where we get our connection. In fact, they say Mashiach is born on Tisha B'Av, whether that means physically or the concept, the spiritual birth of Mashiach, because that's the Mashiach is the idea of taking us out of the darkness and reconnecting us with God. Right? So Tisha B'Av is also through the darkness we reconnect with God. Nice ideas there. So what's the idea of the 22 days? Right? Is it 21 days or 22 days? Yes, I saw a very nice idea by someone called Rabbi Wagensberg. I'm going to try linking the article if you're interested in seeing it afterwards. So it gave me some ideas, but obviously you should know by now on this channel, we don't just look at little ideas. We try seeing disparate, different ideas and how to see them in the full picture of everything. So we're hopefully going to touch on to the core of everything, as we always tend to do, right? And show how these beautiful ideas, which seem isolated, actually are even more beautiful when you see how they gel together with one fundamental underlying theme. Okay. So we know that it's very interesting. He points out that the Bnei Yissaschar says, also another great sage from about 200 years ago, something like that. He says that what's the idea of these 3 weeks, right? So just to demonstrate that it's not just 3 weeks. We already have the Marshal saying that these 22 days correspond to the 22 days between Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, Shmini Atzeres, Simchas Torah. There's something else going on. We've got, after the Israelites, the Jews, sinned by the golden calf and the luchos were broken, God wanted to destroy the Jewish people. And Moses had to pray to spare the Jewish people. He used, right, God told him, right, he used the 13 midas of Rachamim, the 13 characteristics of God's abundant mercy. There's a certain way that God sometimes acts, which is his real desire, which is just to do good, even for people who are undeserving. Ultimately, that's a real desire behind God creating the world. And sometimes you can access that on certain occasions, right? And he evoked you can find this in chapter 33 in Exodus, right? Must be around verse 10, 15, somewhere around there. Right? Yeah. And so he called God, and he mentioned certain names: the merciful one, the graceful one, the true one, right? The one who guards kindness for thousands of generations, right? The one who bears sin, right? Interesting. So if you have a look at the 17th of Tammuz, right, and you count 13 days out of the 3 weeks, you get the 17th of Tammuz until the 29th of Tammuz, which is the last day of the month of Tammuz. There's 29 days in Tammuz. You've got 13 days. This is very interesting. He points out that you've got 13 attributes of mercy which Moses invoked when praying for the Jewish people's survival from the 17th of Tammuz. Yeah, each one of those days of mercy was there to basically save the Jews from 13 of those days of the 3 weeks. And then one of the tragedies which happened, again, the first tragedy which happened on Tisha B'Av, was the Meraglim, the spies. And again, God threatened to destroy the Jewish people. And again, Moses had to pray. And this time he used a different version, which had 9 names. Right? We're not going to go into exactly what the 13 corresponds to, but the 9 correspond to. It's very deep Kabbalistic ideas. But he invoked the other version, which is the nine characteristic set of characteristics, and that's from the 1st to the 9th. So you see, there's Moses both times was trying to mitigate any negative destruction which you can have in the Bein Hametzorim now. In these 3 weeks, there was going to be destruction, right? And maybe for generations, it was going to be much worse than we've experienced in Jewish history. But instead, what happened? Moses said 13, right? From the 17th of Tammuz, where they served the Egel, I'm going to pray 13 different attributes of God, and that will mitigate the destruction for the 13 days between Shiva Osba Tammuz and the 29th of Tammuz. And as for the 9 days of Av, he prayed to save him from the sin of Tisha B'Av, which is the 9th of Av, where the Jewish people were going to be destroyed because of the sin of the slandering of the land of Israel, and ultimately God saying that God couldn't take us in safely. So Moses prayed 9 times, nine names of God there. to mitigate those 9. So if you get 13 plus 9, it's 22. So we see clearly there's very deep significance in the number 22 here. However, there's also the idea of the 3 weeks, just 21. Right? We know that there's significance in 21, the number 21, because one of the prophecies, I think, was it Jeremiah? In Jeremiah, was it? He mentions that I will he saw a vision of an almond tree sprouting very quickly, and he asked God, what's this? What's going on here? What does this mean? Right? Yes, this is in Jeremiah chapter 1, verse 11 and 12. Yep. God says to Jeremiah, what do you see? And he said, I see a staff of an almond tree. So it's actually a stick coming from the wood of an almond tree, right? And he said, yeah, you've seen very well, because I will hasten my word to fulfill it. Now, so those who don't speak Hebrew don't see the connection, but the Hebrew word for almonds is shekedim. But the word shoyked can mean to hurry up and to hasten, right? It means to do something with energy and to do things energetically and fast, and to get things going, right, with alacrity, right? So we see a connection between almonds and fastness, right? And he says that I'm going to make the destruction happen very quickly. It's going to be very sudden, right? And Rashi mentions that actually the Midrash says, according to Rashi quotes a Midrash, and he says that it takes 21 days for an almond tree, when it's producing the fruit, for the blossoms to come out. It's very fast with the blossoms, right, of the almond tree. So it's not just it's fast, it's actually precise. It's compared to an almond tree, because the almond it takes 21 days to blossom, and there's 21 days of the 3 weeks. So we see that the 3 weeks is referred to as 21 days, but on the other hand, it's 22 days. So how do you reconcile this seeming contradiction? Okay. So, beautiful idea here. We spoke about last year, and we mentioned it today already, that Tisha B'Av itself is the saddest day of the year, but yet there's something strange about it. It's the way we reconnect to God through the darkness. Okay, so it's a moyed. Okay, that's going to be one of the key points to answer the question here. Now, before we go into that, let's think more carefully about the significance of the number 21 and 22. The number 22 is actually the number of letters of the Aleph Beis. The Aleph Beis, the Hebrew alphabet. And of course, God used the Hebrew alphabet to create the world. Right? And obviously the Torah, what we mentioned once before, that Histaka Baraisa, Bara Alma, God looked in the Torah and he created the world. That means that in other words, the spiritual energy of the Torah, of the spiritual letters of the Torah, are actually the spiritual DNA of the whole physical dimension. Yeah, we explained once in the Holy Tongue lecture. Yeah, that every object is connected, is mapped onto certain spiritual lights, which are actually the letters which spell out the name of that object. So let's say you've got a yad. A yad is yud daled, right? In Hebrew, yad means hand. So if I'm looking at my hand now, if I want to know how this hand is in existence, well, if we was able to see through the fifth dimension, the spiritual dimension, I'd see something. The hand would not be physical anymore. I'd see an aspect of spirituality, and eventually when I get to the root, I'd see two letters, Yud and Dalet, right? Right, and then there's a very complex way that these two letters expand, and they morph into different forms until they go into the physical form, which is the hand. That's how creation works in relation to its spiritual roots, right? So when God says, "Let there be light," Yehi Oyer, you get the word Aleph Vov Resh Oyer, and that transforms into actual light. That's how the idea works. So the 22 letters of the Aleph Beis are really the source of creation, right? And they're the source of the Torah. The Torah is made up of the 22 letters. Remember, what did we get when we went out of Mitzrayim? Mitzrayim, Egypt. That's limiting us. We can't transcend the physical to get to that level of spirituality, the world of letters, the world of concepts, the world of divine light. We can't get there. Once we came out of Egypt, we can start going there. Until we get to Sinai, where we receive the Torah, which is the blueprint of everything. We explained this in the 10 Commandments, the 10 sayings, the 10... remember we showed all the connection between all the 10 to the 10 plagues of Egypt and the 10 Sephiros, right? How they all correspond to each other. They're all just different layers of depth lying inside each other, right? At the source, you've got the 10 Sephiros, then you've got the 10 Aseres HaDibros, the 10 sayings which God spoke to the Jewish people, which is Torah. Then you've got the 10 sayings which God created the world. That's the result of the hidden 10 sayings, or the 10 speeches, the 10 commandments. They're the spiritual source of the 10 sayings which God used to create the world. And of course, the Egyptians, they hid over all 10 of them, so each one of the 10 plagues uncovered one of the 10. And eventually we get to the source. We get to God saying, "I am God." At the source of everything, it's me. The 10 commandments. Commandments meaning connection. Dibur. Dibur means a speech where you connect to the person, as opposed to saying, where you're saying to a person, but you're not with them. You're not on the same level. You don't say with a person. You speak with a person. You say to a person. That means I'm higher, you're lower conceptually. There's distance. That's how God created the world, with 10 sayings. Because he's saying, I'm above the world now, and I'm going to be hidden from you. You've got free will now. But when it came to the 10 commandments, God revealed himself, so he's speaking with us. We go up to the level where we can interact with God directly. So what do we get on Shavuos? The Torah, yeah, we got God's words. We get the 22 letters of the Aleph Beis, the source of creation. Well, obviously, God's the source of creation, but that's how God makes the creation. The spiritual source of creation are the letters which God jumbles up and forms into words, and then the words turn into the physical world. Now, when we lose that by the destruction of the Luchos, we lose our connection to that Aleph Beis, to those 22 letters. They're gone, right? They're jumbled up now. They're fallen down. They're fallen down, and they're detached from the spiritual source now. So we have to reconnect them somehow. This is what's happening in the 3 weeks. One of the ideas, anyway. You've got the destruction of the Aleph Beis itself. The destruction of the Hebrew alphabet. Remember, it's not just an alphabet. It's the divine letters which form creation and form the Torah. We lost the Luchos. The Luchos is the Torah. Right? The Torah being the spiritual source for the physical dimension. And we lost those letters which form the physical dimension as well. So we're mourning the loss of Torah. That's what we're lacking now. When we came out of Egypt, We got the Torah. We're going back into the Bein Hametzorim, the boundaries. We're limited. We can't transcend. We've lost that connection, that Torah connection to God. We've still got it, but it's much weaker. We have a second set of luchos, which were not divinely made. Moses had a part in making them, right? It was a hybrid. God did the writing, but Moses had to chisel out the stones himself. Whereas the first set of luchos, they're all God-given, the stones and the writing. Very deep ideas. Got to hold myself back from getting too sidetracked. Just so many beautiful ideas, and they just they all help, but all going too long otherwise. As you know, if you watch this channel, tell me please in the comments if you prefer the very long lectures where you get everything and it's just you see massive picture, or you just like want to see the whole picture but a bit more concise. Be useful for me to know what people prefer. I can try doing that. So the destruction of the Luchos, the Shiva Osa B'Tammuz, the 17th of Tammuz, is when we lose the Luchos, the tablets, we lose the Aleph Beis. Okay. You've got the 20, the letters of the Aleph Beis are written on the Luchos. So we're mourning that. So in a way, each day we're mourning the loss of another one of the letters. That's what's going on here. Right? You can look at it slightly differently. The Aleph Beis, the Hebrew alphabet, is made in a specific order as well. It's not just the shape and the numerical value of the letters and the sound of the letters and the meaning of each letter's got a meaning. Aleph means teach and Beis means a house, right? Each one of the 22 letters actually means something as well. Kind of like a hybrid between the Eastern and Western languages. Yeah, the Eastern languages are made up of characters which represent words, like a Chinese and stuff like that. So the Gemara, the Talmud in 104a, 2, 3, 4. I think it's 104a. Might be 105a, I can't remember. Yeah, 104a in Tractate Shabbos. It goes through very interesting Gemara. It goes through the Aleph Beis. It says there's two young children who said things which haven't been said since the time of Joshua, right? They went through the Aleph Beis. You know, little kids learning Aleph Beis, but they said no, Aleph Beis, Aleph Bina, teach understanding, teach wisdom and knowledge. Gimel Dalet. So there's the first 4 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. Aleph Beis Gimel Dalet. Like alpha, beta, gamma, delta. If you know your Greek, it's a lot of parallels there, right? Aleph Beis, teach understanding, right? Gimel Dalet, Gimel Dalet, Dalim, and then do kindness. Gimel means do kindness. Dalim to poor people. We spoke about the Gimel Dalet with the Armageddon lecture. Was it it was the gratitude lecture. We speak about Goig, which is Gimel, and David, King David, which is Dalet. He's the poor one who realizes I've got nothing, and he appreciates everything he gets. So Aleph Beis, Gimel Dalet. Once you teach knowledge, it's a spiritual giving, and Gimel Dalet, physical giving, then Hey Vov, then Hey and Vov are 2 of the letters of God's name, then you'll be merit to be connected with God. And it goes through the whole Aleph Beis. Very interesting piece there. Of course, with everything very deep, but at least here you can see, you can feel it resonates with depth here. You can already see the significance of a lot of these ideas just by reading it first time. So Aleph Beis Gimel Dalet, there's a purpose to everything, yeah? The first half of the Aleph Beis represents the idea of the thought which goes into a process. The second half represents the actualization. That's called Atbash, which the Gemara speaks about there as well, on the same page, 104a there. Atbash is if you do in English, it would be like AZBYCX. where the first half and the second half of the alphabet will sort of be looping back, so that you go, the first half is like this and the second half is like that, and basically you pair them off, first with last, second with second last. Because the very first thing you think about is the very last thing you're going to achieve. And they think, but how do I get there? How do I get there? Right, I need to have a stage beforehand, right? So you think about, I want to build a house, but I'm going to need raw materials. Okay, where do I get the raw materials? That's the third stage. Thinking, right, and then when you actually carry it out, you hire the workers. Yeah, they're going to buy the raw materials. Then they're going to start building it, putting stuff together, and then eventually you get to that very first picture which you have, which is the Aleph. So the Aleph is going to be manifest in the Toph. The Toph is the last letter of the alphabet. Toph represents the sphere of Malchus, which is revelation, which we spoke about in the introduction to Kabbalah. The second one, we have all those parallels there, right? The final stage of a process. The first stage is the desire. The final stage is the actualization. So that's why the Aleph corresponds to the Toph, right? So we see there's a whole process to the Aleph Beis. There's a Seder to it, and there's a critical Seder, right? Besides the fact that letters can form words, and words bring reality into being through God's imbuing them with His energy, His divine energy. The order of the Aleph Beis is important. So you could say in a way that there's a destruction of the Aleph Beis, which happens in the 3 weeks, where we lose the Luchos, and eventually we lose the temple, which is God's divine presence, right? Because remember, what are we talking about here? Bein Hametzorim, between the boundaries, it means we're trapped. We can't connect with God, right? We lose the tablets. We lose the temple. So we're gradually losing that transcend, that ability to transcend. Those 22 days are representing the breakdown of the Aleph Beis. The Aleph Beis being the keys through which we can connect with God through the Torah. That's why we speak about the burning of the Sefer Torah, right? The destruction of the temple, but in Shivas Tammuz we have an idol in the temple, right? Different ways of connecting with God constantly going wrong. So imagine you going from Toph, which should be the final purpose, where God's finally revealed in the world. That should have been on Shivas Tammuz, where we receive the Luchos in the physical world, tangible. That's the Toph, the final revelation. Instead, it got broken, and the process springs back like you pull a rubber band, pull it too much, it snaps and it goes all the way back. You have to start all the way again. Or you're trying to push something up a hill and you're almost at the top, it slips, and it goes down, 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 catch it, you didn't, and then you have to start all the way over again. So you're destroying the Aleph Beis, Taf, Shin, Reish, Kuf, until eventually Dalet, Gimel, Beis, Aleph. And finally, that's in Tisha B'Av. Tisha B'Av is the Aleph. Yeah? When you go back to the starting point. Right? But that's when it all flips around. Right? When you get back to Aleph, right? There's nothing else. There's only one letter left. And you realize you lost everything. That's where things flip around. Okay. And then you go, and once you start rebuilding again, so it's interesting, the 3 weeks are called the Shlosha de Paranusa. We read a portion of the prophets every Sabbath after the reading of the weekly portion from the actual 5 books. We take a small paragraph from the book of the prophets, and for these 3 weeks there's a special 3 which are all about mourning, all about the destruction of the temple, about the rebellion of the Jewish people, right? They're called the Shiva de Puranusa, the Shalosh de Puranusa, the 3 of punishments, of warnings, of tragedies. Then you have the 7 weeks Shiva de Nechemta, the 7 weeks after Tisha B'Av, the 7 Shabbases, where we read Nechemta, which is comforting, consoling, consolation, where things, oh look at it, we had destruction, but there's hope, we can rebuild. That's what happens on Tisha B'Av. That's where the fulcrum is. Everything pivots on that Tisha B'Av. Now we can start. We've gone to 3 weeks of destruction. You've broken down all that negativity, right? All the futility of the physical world and pursuits of empty things. Now you can start building again. If you start building before the 3 weeks of destruction, that means like you're trying to build a connection with God, but on the side you'll just like mess around with this or do that sin there or whatever. Don't fix that. You've got to break all the negative first, as it says in chapter 34 in the Psalms, around verse must be 15 or something like that, 14. Sur merav aseh tov, right? What was the yeah, right. Sur merah, turn away from evil, v'aseh tov, and then do good, right? Search peace and chase after it. Okay. So you have to get rid of the negative bits first. Once you purge yourself from the negativity, then you've got a solid foundation to start building your personality, your character. You can become a good person once you've got rid of those. Because imagine you work on yourself, you become a very kind, generous person, a philanthropist, but you've got a bad characteristic called selfishness, right? Or honor or attention seeking, yeah, that's going to corrupt your generosity later on, because sometimes we've got a chance to be kind and you get a whole gala dinner in your honor, right? So you say, well, I'm going to go to that, but you've got someone who needs even more help, and it's just going to be a private thing. You're going to have to go and help him, visit him in hospital or something like that. Yeah, if you've got bad character traits, then your generosity is going to be skewed. You're going to do the less optimal one, or you won't do it at all if you're not going to get the honor. So you've got to get rid of those negative traits ideally before you start developing your positive ones. Ideally. Obviously, life's not that simple, but that's the concept. Whenever you can do it, you should do it that way if you can. So you've got the 3 weeks of destruction. That's the idea of stripping ourselves bare of all our futilities, our stupidities, following things which are meaningless in our lives. Then we got the 7 weeks of rebuilding and rebirth, and that culminates in the month of Tishrei. So you've got Tishrei, the first of Tishrei. You've got the Aleph now. Aleph, the first day of Tishrei. Aleph. Now we're going in order. You're going from the Aleph. You're building up. Number 1, right? That's justice. That's just the mind, right? Like we spoke about, I think, on Rosh Hashanah last year, the New Year. The Rosh Hashanah is the Rosh Hashanah, is the head of the year. The day we get judged on our thoughts, our head. That's the mind. That's the Aleph. And then we progress, right? We get to the Yud, Yom Kippur, number 10, very significant. Eventually, you get to the 22nd day, which is Malchus for those Kabbalists out there. We know that on the Kabbalistic level, the 22 days of Tishrei, we rebuilding the parts of Nukva. Go back to the Kabbalah lecture, the introduction to Kabbalah number 2, where we got those different the different partsufim, the different groups of 5. Nukva is the 5th of the different ways that God interacts with mankind, right? So we're rebuilding that aspect, which is the last of the 5, which corresponds to the letter Tov, right? That's Shmini Atzeres. That's when it happens. That's why we got the great joy on Shmini Atzeres, the Simchas Torah, because we've regained that connection with God. We dance with the Torah, hold it, hug the Torah, right? This is our connection with God, and we've got it. We celebrate. That's a letter Tov, I think. I haven't seen exactly which one's Aleph, which one's a Tov, but that's what makes sense to me. I'm usually cautious of saying my own ideas, so I say that with a caveat. But it seems to work very well. So from Tisha B'Av, from Shivas B'Tammuz to Tisha B'Av, you've got the Tov breaking down until you get left with that last Aleph, and then from Rosh Hashanah till Shemini Atzeres, you rebuild, and now the Aleph can expand from that seed of that starting point. It expands, it builds in the correct process. Remember, Aleph Beis is a process until it's manifest and it's realized at the Tov, which is Shemini Atzeres, which is Simchas Torah. Shemini Atzeres, the 8th day of Sukkot, technically, right? That's why it's called Shemini. Atzeres means holding back. That means, remember we spoke about Hametzorim, the two things which hold us back? This is a holding back, which God holds us back to Him. So we're held back to transcend. Beautiful, right? And that's Simchas Torah as well. The other words for Shemini Atzeres is Simchas Torah, the rejoicing of the Torah. So we got the Luchos back, we got the Torah back. Beautiful, right? But there's something even more beautiful here. Well, maybe equally beautiful. We spoke about the question about why is it 21 days, according to one way of looking at the 3 weeks, and on the other hand, there's actually 22 days. What's going on here? I think this is an absolutely incredible idea. Right. By the way, I should mention as well, when we spoke about the 22 days between Rosh Hashanah and Shemini Atzeres, the Kabbalists say that the Arizal, I think, says that this is actually a rectification of the sin of Adam himself. The sin of Adam is the very first sin, the first time mankind cuts himself off from God and destroys his connection with God. Right? Adam was created on the first day of Tishrei, the first day of Rosh Hashanah, which was a Friday, and all he had to do was not eat from the tree of Da'as, which means distraction. You're going somewhere else, you're not just, right? It echoes very strongly the sin of the golden calf. Keep that connection with God. Don't get distracted, right? Don't go up the left side to the throne, right? As we said before, the reason why they served the golden calf is they couldn't handle not being connected with God in the way they wanted to, so they were a bit impatient, and they tried to accessing God through a forbidden channel, which is through the left side of the Merkava, the holy throne, which goes up to God. Which the left side was the cow, the face of the cow, the four sides. We spoke about this on the individuality versus conformity lecture, right? About the four sides of the holy throne. Got on the right side is the lion, the front side is a face of a person, the left side is the face of a cow, and the back side is the north side is the face of an eagle. So he wanted to access God through that. As it's golden, gold is red, which is the left side, the side of din, judgment. Mars is the red planet, also corresponds to that side. War, blood is war, right? Mars is meant to be the god of war. Yeah, they weren't just speaking rubbish. The Romans and the Greeks, they're basing their mythology on something real. It's just they twisted it into making things a bit too physical, right? Anyway, so the sin of Adam was basically he's cutting himself off from God by going somewhere else. He go for the tree of knowledge, right? In fact, the book of Lamentations is called Eicha, and the Medrash says it echoes when Adam ate from the tree in chapter 3 in Genesis. Vayomer yeah, Ayeko. God calls out to Adam after he ate from the tree. Adam's feeling, oh dear, that was a bad mistake, right? He realized his mistake, and God said, Ayeko, where are you? You're gone. What does Ayeko mean? It means, where are you? That means you were with me until now. Now you're just gone. You've detached yourself from me. That's Eicha. How? How could such a wonderful nation, right? How can this massive metropolis now be sitting like an individual in the darkness, right? Like the beginning of the Book of Lamentations. The bustling city of Jerusalem, how can it be sitting sort of like a loner now, just like an empty, quiet, sad person sitting in a corner? That's the sin of Adam, echoing through the generations to the Egel, to the golden calf. The same idea, right? In fact, the rabbis say that when the Jewish people heard God speak at Sinai, the impurity which the snake put into Adam had disappeared because of the Ten Commandments. It purged them of that evil. There wouldn't have been any death anymore, which was a punishment for Adam for eating from the tree of knowledge. Now there's death in the world. 10 Commandments, no more death, right? But then the Satan, again on the outside, he showed them a picture of Moses dying, just like the snake in Eden, in the Garden of Eden, showed Adam or Eve, right? Look, eat from the tree, it's not so bad. It was a discussion between something, the evil inclination wasn't inside him, like we explained in those lectures about the sin of Adam. He was on the outside. And then they served the golden calf, the evil came back inside, the connection again was separated between them and God. There was death in the world again now, right? And when does that get fixed? Both of them get fixed on Rosh Hashanah, right? And the process of Rosh Hashanah to Shmini Atzeres, right? So Adam, on the first day of Tishrei, on the Jewish New Year, that 22-day process, he should have succeeded. And the second day of Rosh Hashanah, the second day of Tishrei, is 2 days is the New Year, for this reason, right? Because those 2 days go together. He should have gone into the Sabbath, which is the world to come straight away. But he didn't. He ate from the tree. So the first day of Tishrei should have finished the whole process of the physical world, should have started with the first day of Tishrei and should have immediately finished the second day of Tishrei on the Sabbath. Yep. But instead, because he sinned, right, those 6 days and the Sabbath transformed into 6,000 years now, which we are almost at the end of. 5785 is the year we're at the moment. Right, so the year 6,000, everything's going to be finished, and then it's the world to come proper. But besides that, it's not just did that happen, but the process every year of rectification is not just the first of Tishrei to the second of Tishrei to fix on a microcosm, on a micro level, the sin of Adam. It'll take 22 days. So the fixing of the sin of Adam takes 22 days now. I'm not going to explain, this is very technical Kabbalistic ideas, exactly the mechanics of what goes on those 22 days, very, very intricate. But the idea which you can take out of here is that the Rosh Hashanah is the rectification of the sin of Adam. Right? I keep saying Rosh Hashanah. The process of Rosh Hashanah to Shmini Atzeres is the rectification of the sin of Adam, right? And then Simchas Torah, we get back to the Torah. What is the Torah? Remember the 2 trees in Eden, in the Garden of Eden? The Eitz Hadas, the tree of knowledge, that's human knowledge, and the Eitz HaChaim, the tree of life. And we know that, as it says in Proverbs, Eitz Chaim Hil Machazikim Bo. The Torah is a tree of life. The Eitz Chaim, that tree of life in the Garden of Eden, is the tree Adam should have eaten from. That's a tree of direct connection to God, without having to go circuitous route through through the evil of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Just go direct. Don't be a repentant person, right? A sinner who repents. Be a righteous person. Just do the right thing to start off with. Eat from the tree of life, from the Torah. Just strengthen the connection. And he went down. He had to rectify it the long way. But at the end of these 22 days, between Rosh Hashanah and Shemini Atzeres and Simchas Torah, we rectify that. And then you get the Nukva, which is the Shekhinah. Right? The Shekhinah is the divine presence which rests in the world, which is our access to our realization of God. That is fixed on the 22nd day. It's beautiful. So you have this 22 days of rectification corresponding to the Aleph Beis in the correct order, finishing with the Tov, which is Malchus, which is Nukva, which is the Shekhinah, which is the final purpose, which is God resting in the world and us experiencing God. And it's a rectification of the reverse of the Aleph Beis, which happens between Tammuz and Tisha, which is destruction of that connection with God, which is destruction of the Aleph Beis. A beautiful idea I saw in this article is one of the names of the month of Av, right, is called Menachem Av. See if I can find it here. I've got it open here. Right. Menachem Av means Menachem means to comfort. So we speak about sort of like with bitterness, like yes, Av, the month of Av. That's a sad month where we have the destruction of the temple and the Tisha B'Av. We call Menachem Av. May God sort of be Menachem us in the month of Av. As we said, Mashiach is meant to be born on Tisha B'Av. But I think it's B'nai Yisrael, or it could be Ritzadik HaKohen. Right. Apparently it's the Kotzker Rebbe. Wow. Very intense. One of the leaders of his school is a very unique character. I'm not going to the Kotzker. Amazing person. He's called the Kotzker. He's well known. He's one of the officially he's one of the Hasidic Rebbes of Hasidus, the Hasidus movement. But he had a very different approach from all the other ones. He was very truthful and integral. He didn't believe in any messing about. We see people when they're praying, they tend to like sway backwards and forwards. He said, "No, you don't do that. That's not that's not how you meditate. What you do is you keep absolutely still." Right, and then when you feel the connection with God, that should make you go backwards and forwards. But we find it's the other way around. People just do this out of habit. So you just, yeah. He said a beautiful idea. So that when we say the name Menachem Av, the comforting, the month of Menachem Av is the name of the month. Menachem Av means the comforting of Av. You can read it like this: Menachem Av is the two letters of Aleph Beis, right? It's the first two letters of the Hebrew alphabet. So Menachem Av, the month of Av, when we have Tisha B'Av, it's comforting and bring consolation to the Aleph Beis itself. Menachem Av, we're comforting the Aleph Beis. Beautiful, right? That's literally what we're talking about here. But how do we resolve this problem of the 22 and the 21? This is a beautiful idea. And now we're going really deep. Okay. If you have a look at the Luchos, the Ten Commandments, you find something very curious. You look in the chapter 20 in the book of Exodus, look in the Hebrew specifically, you see that the Ten Commandments actually have all the letters of the Hebrew alphabet, except for one. It doesn't have the letter Tes, right? I should really check it up myself before I say this. Here we go. Let's do it together here. These are the Ten Commandments from verse 2 until verse 14, right? So here you've got Aleph, you've got a base here. Right, I'm just going to do it in my own time, I guess. The signal is a Gimel. Right, it's got Gimel over here. Right, and so on and so forth. You've got Dalet here, a checker, Hey, you've got plenty of, obviously got plenty of designs, right, etc. Yep, I've just gone through it myself. It took me a couple of minutes. Yeah, every single letter is here, except for the letter Tes. Very interesting. So there's no letter Tes in the Ten Commandments in chapter 20 of Exodus in Parshas Yisro. What's the idea? So really, there's when Moshe broke the Luchos, assuming the first set of Luchos what was written on the first set of Luchos was the Ten Commandments as they were written in the book of Exodus. That means there were only 21 of the 22 letters on those Luchos, on the tablets. So when he broke them, even though the Torah got broken, there was one letter which wasn't damaged. That was the letter Tes. However, if you look at the second time that the Ten Commandments are mentioned, which is in the book of Deuteronomy chapter 4, is it? 4 or 5? Here we go, chapter 5 in Deuteronomy, Parshas V'Schanan, right? And again, you've got the Ten Commandments from verse 6 until probably verse 16 or something, 17, 18, right? Right? Here, there's a change in the way the fifth commandment of honoring father and mother is written. Right? And in Parshas Yisro, in Exodus, it says, in order that your days will be lengthened, al hu adamo, on the land which Hashem your God will give you. But here you've got extra three words. In order that your days are lengthened, ulema'an yitavloch. And look what we got here, the culprit here, or the savior, we should say, the letter Tes, which doesn't appear in the first set of the Ten Commandments. It only appears here in the second set, right? In order that your days will lengthen, and in order that it will be good for you. So the letter Tes here is actually talking about being good for you, okay? I'm not going to go into any other hints in why it's specifically here. I've got my own ideas. I don't want to get sidetracked again, especially as I'm not sure. I mean, the ideas are very nice, but the idea maybe the two levels, this next world and this world, you'll see what I mean. So if the second set of Luchos corresponds to these second sets of the 10 Dibros, the 10 commandments, that means the Tes was not destroyed in the first one, but yet it's present in the second one. That's to say, it's not there in destruction, it was never destroyed, but it's there in the final place. Now, if you say that the letters of the Aleph Beis were jumbled up, and we had to fix them from Shiv'os B'Tammuz till Tisha B'Av, right? We can say that's 3 weeks, 21 days. Yeah, a destruction of the 21 letters of destruction of the Luchos, which starts on the 17th of Tammuz, and that means the destruction of 21 days, of 21 letters, which happens over 21 days, until Tisha B'Av itself, which didn't have a broken letter. And that letter is the letter Tes. The letter Tes. Good. That means Tisha B'Av represents good. Now think about it. What is Tisha B'Av? Tisha B'Av is the 9th day of Av. And Tes, we know the numerical value of Tes is 9. Aleph Beis Gimel Dalet Hey Vav Zayin Ches Tes. Right? Tes is the 9th letter. Amazing. Right? So if you don't look at the order as Tes going back to Aleph, an alternative way of looking, maybe more in tandem with the idea that Moshe's, the 13 attributes of mercy, were the last 13 letters from Shiva Osa Tammuz until the 29th of Tammuz, from the 17th to 29th. But then you have to work backwards from the 9th of Av, because remember the sin was done on the 9th of Av, so you have to work backwards with the 9 midas of Rachamim, the 9 attributes of mercy, which Moses said to save them from destruction because of the sin of the spies, which happened on Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av. You have to work backwards. So it could be that the test goes to, what would it be? It would go to a Yud, right? A Toph all the way back to a Yud from Shiva Osa Tammuz to the 29th of Tammuz, to the 13 letters. But then Moses had to finish off the process of Toph to Aleph, but he starts from Tisha B'Av going backwards 9 days, right? To cover the other 9 days of the 3 weeks. Which would mean that the Tes is Tisha B'Av, and Tes is the 9th letter. So it works out really nicely. So that's very nice. But what does that mean? Right? It's basically saying that we lost the Torah, we lost that connection with God through going through the normal channels of Aleph Beis, the way that Aleph Beis, there should be an order to the world. But God says, you can transcend that. You can get to me even through sin, even though you've sinned, even though you've messed up. There's a way of getting back. And that's through the evil itself, through the darkness. That is Tisha B'Av. Tisha B'Av is the day where we go to the depths, and through the fact that we suffer and that we feel so distant from God, that's where we make that really deep, profound connection with God. And we couldn't have got there without the sin in the first place, without the darkness, without the destruction. The destruction is really good. It's very good. Now, for those who are on the ball, you'll be reminded of something we mentioned a couple of times, is when it says on the 6th day of creation, this is I think, verse 29, the last verse in the first chapter of Genesis, the end of the 6th day, right? Vayar Elokim es kol asher asa. Now God saw everything he did, not just what he did on the Friday. He looked at the whole of creation which he did. V'hinei toiv ma'oid, and behold, it was very good. All the other days it just says Vayar Elokim ki toiv, right? And God saw it was good. But now it says at the end of creation, it says V'hinei toiv ma'oid. It was good. Ma'od means very, very good. What's very good? And we explained that the Medrash says that Toiv refers to what we would call good. The Garden of Eden, the good inclination, the inclination to do good, right? And other positive things, right? Toiv Ma'od, very good, refers to the Satan, refers to the evil inclination, it refers to Gehenna, hell, suffering. Why? Because it's only through, the basic meaning is, it's only through challenges and overcoming resistance and through having free will that we can choose to be close to God. Like our very first, see, I told you, it always comes back to the Keystone lectures, always back to the fundamentals. That very first lecture on the channel, which everyone has to hear. It's a short one, so no excuse. It's only 30 odd minutes, right? The whole purpose of creation, right? Why didn't God just create us in a state of bliss? Is because he wanted us to become like him. And the only way we can do that is through our free will, and the only way you can have free will is if there's another option, right? So the letter Tes means good, but to be very Tes, you want to know what Tes really is? The best form of good is through the darkness, is the goodness which comes through the darkness, through the destruction. So therefore the Tes was not destroyed. You can't destroy the Tes. When Moshe destroyed the tablets, you can't destroy the Tes. Because you can only destroy something which is good, and if you lose the good, you don't deserve the good, you don't get it. However, when it comes to the real good can only come through free will and some aspect of darkness, either the resistance to do good, which you overcome, or the actual sinking into the darkness, and then you rectify it, use it as a springboard to get even closer to God. Like we said last year, that Tisha B'Av is a day where because of the darkness, we get closer to God. It's the day of the year where we have the most intense connection with God. It's God, you're so far, but I know you're still there, right? Right? And that creates, it shows that you can be as far from God as possible. He's always near enough for you to, because God's everywhere. He's there with you in the darkness. Just reach out. He's there. Yeah? Not just when, miracles, fantastic, there's a temple. Yeah, God's here, nice. It's fickle. When he's gone, when you're suffering, when he seems to be hiding, he's looking for you. Do you still care about me? Do you still want me? And we say, yes, we want you. And God said, I'm here with you, right? I'm hidden, but I'm here with you. Beautiful. And that's the real good, the real test. As we know, the Vilna Gaon says, the first time a letter ever comes in the Torah, that's what the essence of that letter is. The first time we have the letter Tes in the Torah is Vayera Elokim Ki Tov. On the first day of creation, God saw the light and darkness, what he created on the first day. Vayera Elokim, and God saw Ki Tov. It's good. So that means the letter Tov, letter Tes always represents good. That's why it says in the Gemara in the Talmud in Brochus, when it's speaking about the interpretations of dreams, about 3 big pages there, or about, I think I worked out over 50 different dreams. It shows what the meanings of different things. You see this tree, this animal, whatever. It says if you see the letter Tes in the dream, you should be looking for good. Look out, something good's going to happen. Why? Because it starts with the word Tov. But we know the word Tes starts with many words. Tome, impure, starts with the letter Tes. Timtum, blockage, right? The reason is, as Vilna Gaon says, is because the first time a letter comes, that's showing you what the essence of the letter is. And all other words which have the letter Tes in it can be altered and twisted, whatever, but at its core, the letter Tes means good. And as we said, the real good is when there's evil and darkness, and we penetrate through the darkness. So therefore, it's not possible to destroy that through sin. Because sin's part of the Tes. Tes says, yeah, okay, connection with God is good, right? Disconnection with God can still be good. So therefore, when you smash the luchos, you can't break me, the Tes says, right? Yeah, I've got a Tes shape there. That was a Tes looks like. Yeah, that's a Tes, right? Yeah, right. Yeah, the Tes, you can't break me because I am that letter which, however you try to get to God, through good or through evil, it always turns out being good in the end, right? It just might be more painful and longer doing the evil path, let's say. Yeah, spoke about this many times. Right? That lecture about why God's doing everything He's doing. Two very long lectures, Armageddon number 8 and 9. Just watch 9. It's just a summary of number 8, even though it's over 2 hours, the summary. Speak about this idea at length there. But in the second set of tablets, the one which Moses got on Yom Kippur, remember that those are the part of the 22 days where you're rectifying the destruction of the Aleph Beis. You're fixing the Aleph Beis. Now, God gives the Luchos with the letter Tes in it. Now you've got all 22 letters. Now you've got all 22 letters. Because now Tes is showing you, you remember those 21 which got destroyed? Here, let me help you fix it. So you've got the 22 letters of the 22 days between Rosh Hashanah and Shmini Atzeres, the new year until the rejoicing of the Torah. Absolutely amazing ideas. Okay, and that points directly to the purpose of all creation, like we explained in our third Keystone lecture, the third lecture on the channel. The Keystone lectures, for those who don't know, who are new to the channel, it's a short playlist of 4 lectures I gave showing the fundamentals of Judaism, where everything is based on them. Yeah, however distant it may seem from how trivial some ideas might be, you can always trace it back to these ideas, these fundamental underlying key themes. That's how you see the beauty of the Torah. It's one whole. Despite them parts all over, it's so coherent. It's so gels together amazingly because it's all based on these principles, these ideas. And this idea we're talking about is Gilu Yichud, the revelation of God's oneness, the idea of God revealing himself through the darkness to show there's nothing which escapes God's power. God wants to do good, he'll do good. He'll do good if you do the right thing, he'll do good if you do the wrong thing, because you'll repent, or unfortunately, if you don't manage to repent, it'll be through suffering, but he'll get there in the end. Even people who suffer, eventually they'll come out and they'll get that good which God wants to give to them, which is basic experience of God himself. That's the idea that there's another word which is connected to the word tov. Tov means good. It also means something which with permanence. Something which is ra, bad, is ro'ua, shaky. A kosa ro'ua, shaky wall. Ro'ua is made up of the word ra. It's just ra, right? Something which is bad is something which is not permanent. It's temporary. Yeah, that's what the evil inclination tells us to do. Do this, you'll get pleasure. For how long? Only temporary pleasure. At the end of your life, you're not going to care that you did this sin over here. You ate something which you shouldn't. You looked at something you shouldn't have. Yeah. You said something you should have, right? You shouldn't have. Whereas toiv is something which is permanent, right? So that's the letter Tes again. The idea of good, God's good being permanent, absolute. There's no way to get out of God's plan of giving good. It's impossible, right? That even though we do have free will, but God's got different paths. You can choose which path you want to go through. You want to take a straightforward path, the slightly harder path, or the extremely painful path. Whatever you do, you're going to deserve it one way or the other. You're going to get my pleasure I want to give to you. You're going to have the relationship with me, right? And you're going to deserve it whether you try to to deserve it or not. You're going to end up deserving it. Suffering is the unfortunate way of doing it. Yeah? A person's going to feel proud. Look, I suffered to reveal God in the world. Right? Like we spoke about many times. Okay? So summing up today what we spoke about. Missed anything out? So we spoke about the 21 days and 22 days. So what's the answer? We see the answer now. On one hand, the process of the 3 weeks is a process of destruction of the Aleph Beis, but it's only destruction of the Aleph Beis of the parts which can only be done if they're done correctly. That means the letters of Aleph to Tov, besides the Tes, the 9th letter, right? If you lose your connection with God, there's no mechanism within the letters to get you back to that. However, the letter Tes, you try destroying the letter Tes, it says, fine, right? I'm going to hit here, you're going to swap me, and look what's going to happen. You're going to give me a bit of extra drag, and go whoop, like that. You try hitting me, I'm going to get there. just through a faster way, but a longer way. You see, right? The letter Tes can't be kept down. Good is permanent. Good doesn't get affected. So therefore, in the second set of tablets, you do have the Tes, because now that's talking about the rectification of the sin of the golden calf and the sin of Adam as well, to an extent. Like we explained, Yom Kippur is part of that process of the rectification of the sin of Adam, which happens on Rosh Hashanah, on the first day of the Tishrei, the first day of the year. And that culminates in 22. So therefore, the 3 weeks are 21, corresponds to 21 broken letters. But the 22nd letter, which we do mourn for as well, because at the end of the day, the Aleph Beis as a whole got destroyed by the breaking of the Luchos and the losing of the Torah as a connection with God. But the tiny thing which keeps us going is that letter Tes, which is the Tes, the number 9, which is the 9th day of Av. And the 9th of Av is the 22nd day, but it's not part of the 21, but yet it is part of the 3 weeks, right? It's that number 22. It's the one which takes the 21 broken parts and says, okay, let's start fixing things now. And that's on the physical level and the emotional level, the spiritual level. That's exactly what happens in Tisha B'Av on all those levels. We feel the beginning, the seeds of a rebirth, right? On one hand, the Tisha B'Av is the last letter to break, which is the Aleph, which is the seed. It's the seed which now starts to break. The Aleph, number 1. The oneness, the tiny dot, the isolated dot, which now things can grow again, right? But on the other hand, it's also the Tes. It's the Tes, the number 9, the beautiful idea. Then associated with the number 9 is the word emes, which means truth, which is Aleph Mem Tov, the first, middle, and last letter of the Aleph Beis. Aleph has a numerical value of 1, Mem is 40, and Tov is 400. If you take the gematria cotton of those three letters, that means you cut out the zeros, which is a certain method of gematria, right? So you have 1 plus 4 plus 4, so which is 9, right? So the number 9 represents truth. It represents the whole Aleph Beis, beginning to end. The number 9, truth. The truth is the totality of creation, the Aleph through to the top, the beginning, middle, and end. And we know that the seal of God is emes, truth, right? If God would, so to speak, have a signature, he'd write emes, truth. Why? Because God at the beginning, God running the process, and God bringing everything to its final resting point. That's a Tov at the end. Like we said, Tov is Malchus, it's revelation, right? It's how everything's revealed at the end. Beautiful, beautiful ideas here. So let's sum up again, right? We had 5 things which happened at the beginning of Bein Hametzorim. Bein Hametzorim is between the 2 boundaries, the 2 limits which limit us. Where those limits come from, destruction of the Torah, of the Aleph Beis that happens with the breaking of the tablets on Shiva Tammuz, the 17th of Tammuz, culminating in destruction of the temple on the 9th of Av. And that's 22 letters. The 22 letters representing the connection between the physical and the spiritual, between us and God. We're all connected through those spiritual letters. They get broken, right? And we fix them with the days from Rosh Hashanah to Simchas Torah, where we regain the Torah, we dance with the Torah through the reverse process, where we're going from Aleph to Tov at the end. Tov representing the Shekhinah, God's presence with us, right? And we also mentioned this beautiful idea of the letter Tes, right? That there's 21 days, the 3 weeks, but there's a 22nd one, right? Which is the letter Tes, which isn't in the first set of tablets which were broken. So the Tes didn't get broken, right? But yet the Tes is part of the 22 of the Rectification, which is the second set of Luchos, which corresponds to the 10 Commandments in the book of Deuteronomy, in verse Chanan. right? Right, and even the word there is leman yitavloch, test, in order that would be good for you. So we can see the test being in the word good there in the Ten Commandments, in the second version, right? For those who don't know, that when God actually said the Ten Commandments, he miraculously said both versions simultaneously, right? So when it came to the word remember the day of the Sabbath, which it says in Exodus, and guard the day of the Sabbath, which it says in the Deuteronomy version, he said the words Zochar and Shomer at the same time as if it's one word, which is very hard to imagine, right? But that's how we understand it. When it came to the writing of the Luchos, I think the idea is that the first version is written on the first Luchos, the second version is written on the engraved on the second set of Luchos of tablets, right? We explained that's the idea of the test. The test is that 22nd one. So on one hand, the 3 weeks are 21 days, right? 3 weeks, but they're also 22 when you look at the totality of the Aleph Beis, right? But that 22nd one is not, even though it's part of the destruction, because Aleph Beis did get destroyed, it's the letter which can take all the destruction and start flipping it around. That's the job of the test, to make sure everything is good, whether there's been mistakes or whether everything's been going very nicely without a hiccup. Yeah, that test, good because God is good. And his goodness is permanent. Like we said, Tov, Vayar Lekim Ki Tov, and God saw that it was good. And the Rambam says that he saw that it had kiyum, right? It had continuity, right? So the word good can also mean something permanent, right? Whereas Ra'ua, something which is shaky, evil, Ra'ua, shaky, something bad, is you've got a bad ladder there, quite shaky. There's a good ladder, it's a sturdy ladder, right? It's tough, it's good, it's sturdy, it's healthy, right? Something healthy is not going wrong. Beautiful. All right, I think we'll leave it there, and hopefully we'll manage to do another lecture on Tisha B'Av, which is even deeper. Well, maybe not, but it's got some new ideas which I only learnt recently. So, and they're astounding ideas, absolutely incredible, all to do with dimensions and stuff like that. Anyway, right. So, yeah, and I hope you enjoyed that and you've got some inspiration. And yeah, hopefully this year, only a few days away, Tisha B'Av. Hopefully it will be actually a day of a Moed, a festival, and it'll be Toif. It will be that real good, and we can get back to that that goodness which we look forward to, which is a connection with God and the return of His Shekhinah, His divine presence to the world. All right, thanks for listening. Bye for now.